once again. Well, Martin Kochi, our first speaker, is an assistant professor at the Institute of Fundamental Theology and Dogmatics at KU Linz. His doctoral dissertation was published as the monograph Thinking Faith After Christianity, for which he received the prize for Theological Book of the Year from the European Society for Catholic Theology. In 2023, his work, Christianity After Christendom, is that okay?
Perfect.
Was published by Bloomsbury. His research includes philosophical theology, the theological turn in phenomenology, and the world as theological problem. Because his work operates at the intersection between contemporary philosophy and theology, and is dedicated to the critical examination of the transformation of religious experience in the secular age. Jorge Nicolás Lucero is PhD from the University of Toulouse, Jean Jaurès, and Universidad de Buenos Aires. He has conducted postdoctoral research at the Gino Germani Institute of the Universidad de Buenos Aires, focusing on the work of Jan Patočka. He has translated Patočka's book Interiority and World and the article Platonism and Politics. He also published several articles on the author and in specialized journals. He currently works as a professor at the Universidad Nacional de Lanús and the Argentine University of Enterprise. Carlos Contreras Medina is a mechanical engineer from Universidad Central de Venezuela, holds a master's degree in philosophy from the Universidad Católica Andrés Bello, and is a PhD candidate in philosophy at the same university. He's currently a research professor at the Instituto de Investigación de la Comunicación e Información and the Instituto de Estudios en Humanidades, both part of the Universidad Católica Andrés Bello. At this university, he teaches ethics and modern philosophy. He also teaches mass communication theory at the Faculty of Communication and Information Science of Universidad Monte Ávila. He's also the academic coordinator of Master in Philosophy and is part of the coordinating team of the Advanced Studies Program in Digital Humanities, both programs at the Universidad Católica Andrés Bello. His research interests include phenomenology, communication theories, and cultural studies, with a special emphasis on topics related to ontology, aesthetics, and media theory. So you are all welcome. And Martin, I think you can start, and we're going to listen to you very carefully.
Thank you very much for this wonderful introduction. I hope you can hear me well because I'm talking to you from the other side of the world, from a very hot season, what we are currently experiencing here in Central Europe. Quite unusual for us, but it's really hot. And I hope my internet connection will be stable because I'm not at the office today. I had to brought my kids to the grandparents because they have now 2 months off, but we still have to work, and I have to park our 3 children somewhere to do some academic work. So let's do it. What I want to discuss with you actually is my current work in progress, which relates very closely to the philosophy of Jan Patočka. In the introduction, you introduced me as the one who has been working on Patočka since my PhD studies. And yeah, Patočka is the hero of my dissertation, and you never leave those heroes behind, even though you try to explore new fields and new questions. And actually, I'm right now in the phase when I have to teach a lot at my university, but now in summertime I have more time to write, to do research, and this is exactly the content of my research equals what I will be trying to present to you today, and that's that's a focus on one, perhaps the most famous idea of Jan Patočka, and that's the concept of the solidarity of the shaken. You introduced me that by training I'm a theologian, and I come from this theological perspective. And when I read Jan Patočka, I read it from the context of the so-called theological turn in French phenomenology. We all know this debate that some people say theological turn never happened, theological turn happened, but it's not good for phenomenology, or theological turn happened and it's good for phenomenology. I don't want to go into this debate. I just want to make a note that I have this debate in my mind when I talk about Patočka as a theologian. And I say this because what I'm trying to do is not to use theology or theological ideas or concepts for elucidating or exploring phenomenological questions further. I try to reverse the order. I try to learn as much as I can from phenomenological perspective, from phenomenological philosophy, which is so unique in discussing the structure of human experience, in order to reinterpret first Christianity as such, as a phenomenon we encounter in the world, and second, to create something what I would call a more credible theological grammar for talking about concepts. And that's why Jan Patočka and his concepts, in particular the concept of the solidarity of the shaken, is crucial, because Jan Patočka is an ideal figure. He has no theological agenda behind his interest in Christianity. He's a pure phenomenologist, the pupil of Husserl and Heidegger, of course, in his very creative reinterpretation of both. But when he is interested in something what might appear like theological turnish thing, he is interested as a phenomenologist. He wants to understand what's going on. He wants to understand what kind of experience, what kind of phenomena we are discussing. And that's why I, as a theologian, find so unique and much more interesting than the debate about, for example, Jean-Luc Marion, who is sometimes there, sometimes sometimes on the other side of the shore, discussing theological concepts, saying I'm not a theologian, but yeah, maybe there is. Jan Patočka doesn't have this problem. Second, he died 1977, so he died before the entire debate concerning the theological turn began. So he's free of this suspicion trying to theologize phenomenology. So that's for the context. And then for the idea, the solidarity of the shaken, why I find it so important for me and so intriguing. The solidarity of the shaken is widely discussed, perhaps the most discussed idea of Jan Patočka, and specifically in the field of political philosophy or politically attuned phenomenological philosophy. Why? Of course, because this idea emerged in a very specific context of Charter 77, the dissident movement of civic society against oppressive regime. And solidarity of the shaken on the political level means just the community of people who share nothing but a common interest for something Patočka would call the movement of truth, the authentic movement of life, the authentic being in this world, without necessarily intellectually thinking what this authenticity means, or what this authenticity means in its full expression. It's enough that there is this solidarity, this unsolid solidarity, I would say, which put people together for a common interest, even though these people come from very, very different backgrounds and perspectives. And what I try to do, what I try to understand with Jan Patočka is what's actually at the ground of this experience, or at the core of this experience, because the solidarity of the shaken, when we discuss that, and philosophical interpretations of Patočka discuss that, they already talk about this movement, the civic movement, the community created on this unsolid principle of being shaken. And that's exactly what interests me. What is this individual experience behind this solidarity, this being shaken? And Patočka, because he didn't have time in the 1970s to discuss that, he didn't really elaborate on this individual part, which is a prerequisite of this embodied communitarian part of the solidarity of the shaken. He didn't talk much about this individual experience. But when we go to his writings, and when we read not only readings of or interpretations of Husserl and especially Heidegger, but all of his phenomenological philosophy, all of his effort to try to understand what does it mean to live in the world. We know that his habilitation was entitled "The World as a Philosophical Problem." So he was always somehow around this idea. What does it mean to be in the world? And I think what I try to trace from the solidarity of shaken is exactly this line of individually being shaken, this individual experience of being shaken, which I translate as grappling with finitude, with our being in the world, so sort of Heideggerian way of reading it, or perhaps one can go even with Patočka a bit beyond Heidegger and compare it with Jean-Luc Nancy's idea of abandoned being, for instance. Yeah, this very fact, this very experience we all have as humans as such, without necessarily intellectualizing this experience. Even though we think, we don't reflect on this experience, we share this experience as human beings, simply by being stretched between the birth and death, being temporal, being in the body. And this idea of being shaken, this grappling with this idea, is something what brings me then, while reading Patočka, back to Christianity as such. Because Patočka, at some points, he's interested in Christianity for certain reasons. And what are those reasons? Why is he insisting that Christianity, to use perhaps the most famous definition taken from the heretical essays, is the elan of human life, which enables humans to struggle against decadence. And what is decadence? Decadence is to forget that we are shaken, to live, not to live in problematicity, not to live in shakenness, but to live in settled life without problems. And somehow Christianity brought him to this recognition. Okay, there is something interesting about this phenomenon, this religious phenomenon, and this intellectual tradition, which is important. And I believe it's exactly this that Christianity as a religion is a way how to internalize this individual experience of being shaken, how to embody it and even so live it on a very concrete level as a community, as the solidarity of the shaken, without necessarily becoming an intellectual, that means philosopher, or without necessarily being a theologian, the theoretician, the one who knows what this particular tradition intellectually is about. And quite recently, I met a very interesting person, an old Anglican theologian in Great Britain, and Andrew Shanks, who wrote and published a book a year ago with the title Apocalyptic Patience, where he offers a very interesting reinterpretation of Patočka's solidarity of the shaken and equates this concept with lived Christianity. And he goes even so far that he sees the solidarity of the shaken as the authentic form of Christianity, and authentic Christianity as the solidarity of the shaken. And for him, this is very important because he finds this combination as the cure, pharmakon, to what Hegel would call das unglückliche Bewusstsein of the human being. And he says that solidarity of the shaken precisely, and this is something what he doesn't say explicitly, but what I, based on my reading of Patočka, find very much in line with Patočkin way of thinking. This kind of equation between Christianity and the solidarity of the shaken saves us not only from das unglückliche Bewusstsein, the unhappy consciousness, this bad state, which could be, according to Hegel, produced by Christianity itself, or even imposed by Christianity itself on a human being. But that's another debate, and we can touch on this later in our debate. But the point is that this cure, the solidarity of the shaken as authentic Christianity, and Christianity as the authentic solidarity of the shaken, is fascinating for Patočka. Or Patočka talks about the solidarity of being shaken in relation to Christianity because exactly to share this experience, to take part in the solidarity of the shaken, one does not need to agree intellectually on this or that. We just share this common shakenness. That's what makes us human, kind of universal experience. And of course, our interpretation of this experience might differ according to our tradition, according to our context, according to religion, philosophical tradition, whatever. But there is something, and this is phenomenological insight, I would say, par excellence, there is something we share and to which we can all relate, and what can put us together. And we don't need to be intellectually impatient, meaning philosophically explain it, and those who don't agree are not with us. Or even worse, we don't need to be religiously impatient. Okay, this is our tradition, and those are the laws and norms and values of our tradition, and who is not standing in line with us is not with us. The solidarity of the shaken offers kind of framework how to talk differently, perhaps more credibly about the Christian tradition. And when I say more credibly, by that I mean to stress an intuition, which I find in between lines in Jan Patočka, that Christianity, first and foremost, is not a religion. It is a movement of being. It's a way of being in the world. It's a way of inhabiting the world by not running away from the individual experience of being shaken, the individual experience of finitude. And in this sense, to use Patočka's words, Christianity is a true Platonism for people, which he means very positively when he says this in Heretical Essays, in the fifth essay discussing Nietzsche, I believe. So so to conclude, what I try to do with Jan Patočka is to take his phenomenological insights and use them in Christian theology or philosophical theology, which reinterprets Christianity in a secular age, without baptizing Patočka, without saying that he he believes that Christianity is this or that necessarily, or that he adheres to this idea of Christianity, but he finds it so interesting that he can't resist to somehow think out loud about it. And I think Patočka's philosophy offers a very intriguing philosophical liberation of theology. And when theology realizes many of those insights, then theology can offer back to philosophy some raw material, so to say, about which we can discuss and move further on. So I would stop here. I think it was a bit chaotic and all over the place, but maybe you have some interesting questions which we can discuss and discuss further. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Martin. What a beautiful dissertation, beautiful, and so it comes from the heart. I can feel it. I'm so touched. I have to say, beautiful. We can talk about it later. I promise. It's really beautiful. Well, now I have to present once again Jorge Nicolás Lucero from Buenos Aires. Tienes la palabra. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Martin, for your words. It was very passionate. Well, if it's okay for all of us, I would like to read a little text I wrote for this this talk. It's not too long. It's very. Well, I hope it's not too long. But first, I would like, as Martin said about talk about his interest in Patočka philosophy. I would like to say that first in my career, I became very interested on Patočka's idea of movement and this ontological conception. But when I finished my PhD and have the opportunity to study him more carefully, I realized that what was essential in his philosophy was some kind of conception of community. So what I want to present here and share with you is the idea that Patočkan philosophy is like a philosophy of community. So I would like to present this in two perspectives, towards two perspectives. One, a more traditional one, which is the phenomenological and existential approach to community, and the other one is what we can say a socio-political one. Well, I start. I will start. Even if Patočka is one of the main successors of Husserlian thought, his philosophy conceives a powerful criticism to subjectivism. That is to say, his philosophy conceives a powerful. That is to say, he does not consider the experience of the world is reducible to consciousness as an inhabitable ground. On the contrary, he understands the world experience is founded in the world itself, because we are not only in the world, as Heidegger explains, but also Patočka emphasized that we are being of the world, we are a product of the world. This belonging is constitutive to existence of or it's constitutive to human existence as such. And a nice way to see this emphasis can be found in the proper language of Patočka. I mean, the Czech language. In some occasions, Patočka makes reference to the term, to the Czech term of word, svět, which etymologically is connected with the term of light, světlo. So svět and světlo have a common origin. I mean, word and light. So in this sense, we can say that the word is not the mere soil, the mere base of relationships, or the relations and links between the things, between us and the things, or between us and the others, but the source of appearing as such. And is a source of appearing as such that precedes things and precedes us. So subjectivity is not the primal place of sense or of giveness, but a consequence. And in now I don't remember the exact work of Patočka where it used this idea, but he says that subjectivity became an organizational center of the world as a structure, but not the fount, not the source of the sense. But what is in the center of this transcendental structure? Of course, it is not about an objective world. As a phenomenologist, Patočka tries to describe the natural world, not in the physical way of natural, but in the structures of everyday life. And if we go to his youth works, he refers to the structure of the world experience as an intersubjective matter, a matter of cohabit and cooperation. Experience, thus, is beyond all a communal transcendental event. This constant transcendental collaboration is what conceives home, no? What Patočka calls home. In Czech, the word is domov, as a part of the structure of sense. This home, so, is not an individual refuge, but it's what Comenius, his compatriot Comenius, Jan Komensky, called a collective center of safety. So this structure of the world demands the others, demands the neighbor in the project of existence. But this idea is linked with the idea of movement, no? What I referred at the beginning. Patočka has explained existence, no, with that concept of movement. But taking the idea, the Aristotelian idea of motion as the actuality of potentiality, the Czech philosopher, no, by Patočka, wants to describe how our situated and corporeal existence is developed by movement. This movement, Patočka divided in 3 stages, or what we call 3 stages, is at the same time the movement of the world, the movement of the body, and the movement of the self. And even more, that movement creates all of them as well. And in every of these stages, the neighbor, the other, is implied. If you allow me, I would like to present this very, very shortly. This what's the difference between this movement? No, the first movement called in English anchoring the existence is supported and received by the others as the face of the world. That's a Patočka expression, even it's when someone read this expression could think in Levinas immediately. So in this movement, no, the anchoring, the existence is supported by the others. The others is the face of the world. So it's in order to construct our autonomy and singularization. It is the very constructions of the foundation of home. This movement thus is defined by acceptance. The others are for us. No? The other accept us in this moment. On the contrary, well, a little example of that is the birth. No, when we came to the world, no, we are received and accepted by the others, no? And the others allows us to allows us to make ourselves. On the contrary, another movement of called self-extension, where autonomy is already made, the others can be against us, because when existence is autonomous and singularized, our existence becomes an interested one. The world turns out a place of practical and useful things, and people, on the others, may be part of that complex of useful things. So conflict, fights, suffering, violence are imminent possibilities. And I took a concept that Martin had used recently, that is the concept of finitude. In that movement of self-extension, what is going on is the absence of finitude, is the absence of the awareness of finitude. But in the first one, that Martin explained that as the movement of truth, or which is for Patočka, this movement is the very human movement. And Patočka called it breakthrough. That movement implies a strong event in human existence, where auto-comprehension of the self and the world could eliminate this fetishization of the others. When we actually understand the idea of world as light, the total possibility of the self this is the moment when we actually understand the idea of world as light. We mean the total possibility of the self which lies in community. And I would like to quote Patočka on this topic very shortly. Confrontation, say Patočka, has not the meaning of devotion. My being is no longer defined as a being for me, but rather as a being in self-surrender. A being which opens itself to being, which lives in other for things, as well as myself and others. To be, to show themselves as what they are. This means life in self-surrender, life outside oneself, not a mere solidarity of interest, but a total reversal of interest. I no longer live in that which separates and encloses, but rather in that which unites and opens. Being opens itself. That's the end of the quote, but I would like to to add that, but here Patočka is explaining the idea of problematicity of existence, which is connected of what Martin talks about finitude, because problematicity only is there when the sense is open, and the only way to the sense is opens to the others is finitude. When there's not finitude, when the self is so sorry for the expression, powerful, that it's enclosed to itself, finitude is not an option. So problematicity is not an option as well. So this radical change conceives coexistence as one in, if you allow me the expression, coexistence as one in and for the other. So I talk about the phenomenological perspective, and but I've said to you that there's another perspective that we could take, that is a socio-political one. Because if this means that the collective center of safety is not given, this idea of first movement means that the center of safety, that's the idea of home, is not given only by the fact of being together. The common home requires a bound to something transcendent that cannot be found in every social organization. This question is important for Patočka for the very beginning of his work. I remember that Jan Patočka got politicized after, but that was his words, got politicized, I get politicized after his research stay in Berlin in 1933, when he saw the insurrectionist masses of Nazism threatening everything that constitute the historical and political life of Czechoslovak people. So that being in the self-surrender demands a particular form of organization based on the problematicity of sense. And Patočka found this idea in the concept of polis, because polis opens a field where the free activity of men opens up the possibility of recognizing themselves as free and equal. Observing the loss of a center and the closure of sense than the other political forms, like, for example, empires, deployed. The polis institutes so history as such, because there we can find the opens of what shakens, and the concrete example of the movement of truth, but could be others for Patočka. For example, the very foundation of Czechoslovakia could be interpreted as a moment, an historical opens of what is shakens. So, for finishing, what shakens could be found in the most horrendous and humanizes ways of living. Sorry, and unhumanized ways of living. At the end of his life, Patočka had fought on the world as what defines modern era, not only for violence and death, but especially because war is the maximum expression of technifications of existence. It's the great danger of what the second movement could become. But in these extreme conditions is where technifications can short circuit, transforming the dark conditions in the getaway of breakthrough. Patočka called it the solidarity of the shaken. That is a solidarity of those who are moved by an understanding of the polemical unity of communal existence, no, and make the experience of freedom something intersubjective. Well, I would like to finish here for start talking. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much, Mark. So good. Thank you very much. Carlos, it's your turn.
It's my turn. Well, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be with Jorge and Martin. And finally, we can do a thing together here in the university, the Catholic University Andrés Bello. Well, I came from ancient philosophy. My research, my master thesis was about Plato and Plato's Symposium, and that information is not in my bio. I was talking this with Lorena later, but yes, I came from ancient philosophy, and my interest in Patočka is the way that he interpreted Plato. When I was finishing my work in my master thesis, I was trying to make a leap or a jump from ancient philosophy to contemporary philosophy. And one night I was searching for books, and I found this book of Patočka, Negative Platonism. And for me, it was such a impression to read this book, because some of the conclusion that I found in this book was pretty similar with the conclusion that I found when I was doing my master thesis. In that moment, also, I found the first book of Martin about Christianity and thinking Christianity after Christianity. That book was for me such an experience, and in that moment I wrote an email to Martin. In that email I said, your book, it's amazing, it's pretty helpful, not only in an academic way, but also in a personal way. Also, it's a Christian, you know. And well, the text that I prepared to read to you is based in my PhD research about this, in this way that Patočka interpreted Plato, because Patočka is pretty famous in such a disciple of Husserl and Heidegger, but he also has a pretty interesting way to interpret Plato that is not much information about this. Yeah, and a book like Plato and Europe, such an important work of Patočka, says that Plato is not accidental in the life of Patočka. So I'm going to read to make it a little bit faster. Well, okay, Jan Patočka and the Platonic idea. Negative Platonism is perhaps one of the Jan Patočka texts that has received most attention in the academic field. Its importance is rarely questioned. However, we are far today from exhausting the implication of the shared philosopher interpretation of Plato. Particularly, the conception of the Platonic idea that is come from a Patočkan reading does not seem to have been sufficiently confronted with what Plato himself said in his dialogues. Patočka proposed a rereading that presents a conception that is contrary to that of traditional metaphysics, considered positive. Rather, he introduced a negative path of philosophical discourse, underlining its distance from any previous conception. It is well known that with the term negative Platonism, Patočka does not indicate something merely negative, understood in a nihilistic sense. On the contrary, he seeks rather to ensure a path toward an authentically philosophical thought. trying to avoid the consequences that follow from what Kohak defined as a metaphysical term. For Patočka, Taba says, underlining such an element of negativity and distinction constitute the only way to formulate an authentic philosophy of the present. For the Czech philosopher, achieving this goal represents an attempt to rescue a conception of the idea that is present in Plato, but which is obfuscated from the need to establish a relationship of participation. Patočka said, the idea is the only non-reality that cannot be explained as a construct of mere realities. It is not an object of contemplation because it is not an object at all. It is essential to understanding human life, its experience of freedom, its inner historicity. It comes to us and proves itself a constant call to go beyond mere objectivity, mere factuality, whose outward presupposition is the human creation of novelty and our ever-repeated effort to break free of the decay to which we are condemned by dwelling solely within the given. End of the quote. To emphasize that the idea does not consist in an object, but in a constant call to go beyond mere objectivity, Patočka articulates his interpretation in the notion of chorismos. With the intention of overcoming the metaphysical impasses that, according to the Bohemian philosopher, will arise from the classical interpretation of Plato, he proposed an access route based on the implication that this notion entails. I quote, "It is, however, important to understand precisely why the chorismos, the separation, the isolation, is an important phenomenon that we cannot ignore or silence. It is a gap that does not separate two realms coordinated or linked by something third that will embrace them both and so will serve as a foundation of all their coordination and their separation. Chorismos is separateness, a distinctness as sich, an absolute one for itself. In other words, the mystery of the chorismos is like the experience of freedom, an experience of a distance with respect to real things, of a meaning independent of the objective and the sensory, which we reach by inverting the original natural orientation of life, an experience of a rebirth, of a second birth, intrinsic to all spiritual life, familiar to the religious, to the initiate of the arts, and not least to the philosopher." End of the quote. The term chorismos and its complex issue captured for Patočka the ambiguity within the doctrine of the ideas. What is usually interpreted as a rigid system of eternal principles and the container of objective truths appears rather to be a force of separation, a gap. According to this interpretation, chorismos will not imply the existence of two objective realms of entity, one sensible and the other intelligible. Rather, it separates objectivity from that which can no longer be articulated in terms of objects. The idea will then be neither an object nor a concept, but rather the origin and source of all human objectification. This is a quote of Patočka. This will be possible because, first and most fundamentally, the idea, according to Patočka, functions as a de-objectifying and de-realizing force. The idea will not be a supersensible entity or a kind of general objectivity, but rather the expression of our ability to step back from the present and the given. In other words, the idea will not be an element of a hierarchical system of substance, a thing to be seen. Rather, it is what gives the possibility of seeing. This vision that goes beyond the immediate present of the given will allow us to finally characterize the idea as the goal of transcendence. Certainly, this way of interpreting the idea negatively brings us face to face with the difficult problem of the ontological status of the Platonic idea. If the idea is not an object as such, comparable with the rest of the objects, what does it consist of? Or, put more radically, does there truly exist such a thing as the idea conceived in these terms? Patočka is pretty aware of this last question, especially when he proposed that, I quote, what remains when we exclude all that is, what other than sheer nothingness, end of the quote. It is clear that for our philosopher, the idea does not consist in nothingness, in an empty thing, but in a no thing. More specifically, the idea will be identified with non-objectivity. For Patočka, it's pretty known that Socrates was the one who really knew how to recognize the non-objective condition of the idea. Socrates, far from use some type of metaphysical hypothesis, has cultivated more than any other the fundamental problematic from which all metaphysical thought proceeds, the connection between man and the totality, I quote, of what is, which at the same time is a contact and distance, end of the quote. Unlike later thinkers, Socrates has had the courage not to hide this problem behind ontological formulas. On the contrary, with his method, he has contributed to fully revealing the difficulty of being, the possibility of affirming it positively, considered it its entirety, is conditioned by the need of always maintain a link with the fundamental no that allows distance yourself from it. Patočka says, Socrates unveils one of the fundamental contradictions of being human, namely, that between the relation to the whole, intrinsic to humans, and the inability, the impossibility of expressing this relation in the form of an ordinary, finite knowledge. End of the quote. Socrates brings in the no that in some way always accompanies, it's a companion of the yes, when man places himself in front of that which is. Socrates' dynamics does not renounce this necessary ambiguity, avoiding the fail into the formulation of abstract precepts. So, Patočka said, Socrates, in contrast with the ordinary mode of direction of life, reached a new level on which it is no longer possible to formulate objective, factual, positive assertion, but in which, for all his mastery of life, he moved entirely in a vacuum. He formulated his new truth only indirectly, in the form of a question, in the form of a skeptical analysis of a negation of all finite assertion. For Patočka, only by this attitude, this exposure to the negative, Socrates can keep his freedom intact. Socrates' mastery is based on an absolute freedom. He is constantly freeing himself of all bonds of nature, of tradition, of other schemata, as well as his own, of physical and spiritual possessions. End of the quote. As a matter of fact, the experience of freedom plays a fundamental role in the recognition of the non-objective character of the idea. For Patočka, this experience has a revealing potential by promoting the recognition that the objects we perceive do not constitute the totality of which is. It is from the experience of freedom that man assumes the presence of something, I quote, higher than man, something to which human existence is indissolubly bound and without which the most basic wellsprings of our historical life dries up. End of the quote. Patočka refers to this presence as the completely other, that which is not a thing and remains outside of the positive thought, the heteron. And it is precisely this conception that highlights the otherness of the idea, linked to the experience of freedom, that allows us to illuminate the paradox of being in the world, namely, that the completely other is something concealed in experience, but which transcends the experiential. In other words, although it is stated that it's not possible to have an experience of the idea, what it is about is discerning the call of otherness in experiencing freedom and transcendence. The implication of this Patočkan way of conceiving the Platonic idea transcends the realm of the strictly ontological. Actually, this reading introduced an ethical dimension that, according to Tava, constitutes the only way to rescue truly philosophical thought. If the idea is not something objective, the way to approach it will not consist only in a cognitive process, but in a practical experience. This experience tries to leave behind any objective principle without getting lost in a cluster of abstractions. For Patočka, only a conception of the idea that takes this implication into account is what will allow us to touch the truth in order to live in it. Diotima and the mystery of the beauty, the second part. As I said at the beginning, there is not much academic literature that addresses the implication of the Patočkan interpretation of the Platonic idea. To this date, no research proposal has been made in which a Platonic dialogue is read, assuming the implication of the text negative Platonism. Considering this fact, I have attempted to show the affinity that seems to exist between what Patočka said in his text, with some of the elements present in Diotima's speech in Plato's Symposium. As a matter of fact, the need to rethink, for similar reason, the ontological status of the idea is one of the conclusions that seems to follow from a careful reading to this well-known discourse. According to Silverman, I quote, Diotima's revelation of the final mystery of beauty itself is the longest depiction of a single form in the Platonic corpus. End of the quote. This is a reading currently shared by many authors, and it can even be said that it's a canonical reading of the symposium. However, despite this consensus, authors such as Rosen have questioned both the existence of a Platonic theory of idea or whether the description of the beauty itself at the end of Diotima's accent in the Scala Moris correspond to an eidos or something like that. In a similar way to what Patočka proposed with the experience of freedom, Diotima anchors the recognition of the beauty itself with the experience of the beauty in the world. This anchoring would occur thanks to the ascending path proposed in the Scala Moris, in which eros, the love of beauty, assumes an integrating function within the lover. This integrative function carried out by eros seems to explain the link that Diotima establishes between beauty itself and the true virtue that the lover engenders by experiencing it. In this way, the introduction of an ethical dimension referred by Tava in Diotima's speech, we see it expressed in the following way. Finding an ontology which is referred to beauty itself and that had a beginning in the experience of beauty in the cosmos, suppose the practical experience of the erotica paidagogete, the erotic teach of the initiate, in which the love of beauty, rightly guided throughout the stages of the Scala Moris, strengthens him in such a way that all the dimensions that constitute his being, intelligence, desires, passion, etc., must aim at the realization of the good that becomes experiential in what is beauty. In turn, all the paideia of Diotima, an ethos of love, with its various stages of accent at the set of experience with beauty, has been possible essentially because the existence of a unique and transcendent foundation that it is beautiful in itself and therefore capable of beautifying every beauty, bodies, soul, laws, customs, science, etc. In this way, ontology and ethos go hand in hand in Diotima's speech in a radical way. Without the inner strengthening of the lover, the leap to beauty itself, and with it, touch the truth in beauty is not possible. But there will also be no integration of all the interior dimension of the lover without the reference to that transcendent beauty that somehow is the foundation of all that is beautiful. According to Patočka, that which transcends us absolutely will not be something objectifiable. Diotima opens the door to this possibility when she takes into account the negative description of beauty itself. Unlike what happens in dialogues like the Phileus, in which there seems to be an identification between beauty and proportion, in the symposium we find a mysterious beauty that is at the same time absolute and unobjectifiable. On the other hand, we find an echo in Diotima's speech of the Patočka's emphasis on pointing out that a particular type of experience, that of freedom, is the path to the idea. As can be seen, the itinerary of Diotima points to the fact that the experience of beauty entails, in some way, an existential implication that for those who walk this path, it involves something more than the verification of some proportion. Today, we will say it is about something more than an aesthetic. This implication will be manifest at its maximum when beauty is linked with the search for virtue, that is, with the introduction of an ethical dimension. This is what Hyland seems to interpret from Diotima's speech when he stated that, I quote, "For some reason, they, Socrates and Diotima, and perhaps Plato, think that it's better or more appropriate or more important to draw out this existential implication of the significance of beauty than say of justice, of courage, or piety. Somehow, they seem to think it is the experience of beauty that brings home this lesson about virtuous living in the most decisive way." End of the quote. This kind of similarities seems to reveal, in short, a particular affinity between what Diotima said in her speech and the Patočkan interpretation of Plato that until now does not seem to have received enough attention in the academic field. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlos. Very beautiful. Well, I think we have some minutes to talk about this beautiful and deep dissertations. And maybe I should start this little debate between us. And then we can talk about between us too.
Yeah.
I was thinking and I was writing things when I was listening to you very carefully. And I was thinking about this experience of being shaken, so full of passion, as Martin talked about this. I share this way of thinking and philosophizing, so to speak. I mean, we can't divide logos from the heart and logos from love, and that's a principle I have to confess. So when I think of this being shaken, I think of solitude too, but you were talking about solidarity, and this is even more beautiful. So I would say a path to solidarity. The experience of being shaken is a profound experience that can make us feel isolated, heartbroken, fearful, or sad. And I would say it holds a deep, resonant connection with Christian thought, as you showed us, Martin. I can feel, I can see this bridge between the Christian experience and this Patočka idea of solidarity of shaking. I think that's a wonderful field to think about. I think it's wonderful. But this connection is not merely intellectual, as you said. It's a felt understanding of shared human experience. We've beautifully discussed how this very shakiness can be a humanizing force. And that's really interesting when we're asking today, what is human? And this could be a very interesting and profound answer to think human once again. So this fostering solidarity is really interesting. However, the inherent paradox, I think I feel, remains. I mean, while being shaken can indeed lead to shared humanity, it often manifests as profound solitude or a broken heart. This leads to a crucial question, I think, I feel. Can the potential for solidarity, which already carries political implications, as you said, serve as a means to reframe our understanding of solitude? This shakenness that can evoke fear or sadness, in essence, can it provide a bridge for rethinking solitude itself? Is this a way to think about that once again? I would ask. What do you think?
Well, thank you for your wonderful reflection, which I think touches critical part of the concept itself, because of course, on the one hand, I am tempted to say, yes, this is a way how we certainly can think solitude once again, because just to borrow from Heidegger, every one of us has to face his or her own finitude, his or her own shakenness, so to say. And even though we can have many experiencing of witnessing this shakenness from the others, at the end of the day, it's us who has to go through this experience in a more or less reflected way. On the other hand, it is not easy, and to ground solidarity or to ground our human being with the others only on this experience might be, of course, extremely difficult and perhaps even impossible, because it's a kind of shocking experience, an experience shattering meaning. And from time to time, we are in a situation where we need kind of meaning to survive the situation. And I have to I have to confess that this tension is something what I, of course, feel in Patočka's philosophy, and what I also encounter when talking to the others, perhaps those who are not so well versed in reading so many Patočka's texts. Their first reaction, to my surprise sometimes, is often, but it's too negative, because I'm very occupied with Patočka. I think for him this was not negative. This was a way exactly to answer or to approach different questions which are part of our human life, and to find actually meaning in those things, but not a cheap metaphysical meaning, as he mentioned sometimes. But it's certainly a very difficult situation, which is not bearable for everyone, and which cannot and this that means for me that these ideas cannot become a new ideology, a new doctrine, which is the only possible doctrine. Patočka wrote this one very beautiful text, in my opinion, with the title "The Spiritual Person and the Intellectual." And I think what he wanted to say with this kind of distinction is that one and the same person can be either the intellectual or the spiritual person. The spiritual has nothing to do with religion in this context. It's a kind of way how to go through this experience, but how not to stick to that experience only and to become the intellectual of this experience, because then it can be perhaps dangerous, I don't know, but certainly very destroying for embracing all three movements of being, as Patočka tries to define them. Because and then I think for me personally, now talk personally, the connection to Christianity is very interesting in this respect, because it's something what kind of what has potential. It's not automatic and so and 100% sure that it will succeed, but what has a potential somehow to relieve this heavy burden of shakenness with a kind of I would say now grand narrative, because next to Patočka, Lyotard is my second hero, and I'm very attached to his critique of grand narratives.
Yeah.
And then I read this person, Andrew Shanks, whose ultimate goal in his book on Patočka and Christianity actually is to reconstitute a grand narrative of Christianity in a kind of way which accepts Lyotard's critique, but at the same time is interested in this Hegelian idea to provide the human mind with a grand narrative which is not hegemonic, which is not oppressive, which is not prescribing every single step of life and existence, but still bears certain meaning, which in Patočka case would be the meaning from our grappling with finitude, with our being in the world. And it's not an easy way, and and I think that's why he was kind of inclined to explore Christianity, even though never in explicit or he this intuition, okay, there is something where a single person can come, take part, without necessarily understanding everything what's going on, but somehow process all those experiences of being in the world, of grappling with finitude. And that's my hope, that maybe I'm more a person of beginnings than than ends, and I think we have to go through this beginning and then see where it leads us personally. But Patočka, to my understanding, offers this beautiful beginning, but we have to be careful how to process it further.
Absolutely agree. Beautiful. Thank you very much, Martin. I don't know, Jorge, if you would like to add something.
Well, let me think. Let me a moment. But I'm to add something of Martin's words. I would like to add that I totally agree with the idea of the construction of the great narrative, but not an ideological one, but the problematical one, no, for using Patočka's words, and that's what Martin refers to the text, the spiritual person and the intellectual. And what's the idea of a spiritual person that develops this conception, no, of which someone could say, for times it refers to the idea of the great philosophers, no, like Socrates and Plato, but it's also like a call, no? to everyone, saying to not yes not to close, no, not to close the sense of reality, and not in the mean that everything is possible, or like we have to, or our ideas will prevail, but that that accept finitude, no, accept finitude is the gateway, no, to respond to a better way of life. And in that text, text, Patočka says that the spiritual person wants to shows the non-evidence of life as itself, no, the non-evidence of life to society. Well, and that's yes, that's something that for me can build a very good narrative to humanity, and that's what, and this is another thing that I would like to add of Patočka's thought, that humanism in Patočka is a particular one, and wants to, and that humanism not want to construct a substance of mankind, of what man should be, but the idea of humanity implies to resist technification, objectivation, and that's what humanism is. Not some kind of specific characteristics, no, but the very fight against objectivation. I don't know if if you could understand me there.
Carlos,
¿Sí? Yes.
está un poco inestable al final. I'm sorry, no, it's my connection. I would like to read,
Okay.
I couldn't hear, Jorge, you were saying something really important, but I lost you. When you said humanism in Patočka is to resist, and I lost you when you said that.
Like for
It's not
human,
it's not a
yes.
it's not a canon, but
and that humanism implies the fight against objectivation, against technification of existence. No,
okay.
That's about all the idea. Not that the mankind had to be a group of specific characteristics. No.
Okay. Got it. Interesting. I would like to read a comment in the chat. Do you think Patočka's philosophy could serve as a bridge between academia and spirituality in our time? And asked Juan Arbeláez, he's a priest, I have to say. What would you answer to Father Arbeláez? Okay, Martin.
Yes, if it is for me, thank you for this question. I'm totally agree that it could be a bridge between academia and spirituality in our time, and about all, because that's what we can think is makes the legacy of one of the legacies of Patočka's thinking. No, that academia on the knowledge as itself is not only a group of ideas when we got that we can collect and being stayed inside academia, but have to change our reality eventually. This change of reality is not, of course, in an ideological way, or but eventually that these ideas allows us to realize or to get the solidarity, to get shakenness, as well, and that's what Patočka in some sense call itself spirituality. Martin's book, some Martin papers show it very well, that the idea of Christianity is not only constructed by a dogma, but for Patočka, but Christianity implies one of the main problematizations of sense and human existence, and that's why I mean humanism, or humankind implies a fight against objectivation and technification. Now, in that case, Christianity, our spirituality as a whole, is fundamental for Patočka. Well, I hope, Juan, I could answer to your question.
Thank you very much.
Of course, if Martin and Carlos want to say something about that more properly.
If I may, a short follow-up to this excellent question about spirituality and academia. Patočka, he was a very holistic thinker. For him, his philosophy, there is just one world, one life. There is no, to visualize his thinking, we can't think of a circle, like cake, with, okay, this part is spiritual life and this part is intellectual life. And I think that's exactly the point of the essay, The Spiritual Person and the Intellectual. So I hope I won't be confusing about this, but for him, exactly what Jorge tried to explain about Christianity as conveying this message of problematicity and being shaken, questioning the world. That's not something what happens at 6 o'clock or after 8. Yeah, that's for Patočka. For Patočka, life is a spiritual life when you are going through this experience or many other experiences, but that's the one thing, one holistic thing. So it's not like that we could read Patočka and realize, okay, this is my life and I can add something to it to a certain degree, and then it will become spiritual life. It's more like becoming, spiritual becoming, and the content can differ, of course, whether we take it from here or there. But the important point of Patočka's philosophy is this holistic idea. We are being in this world, and it won't make us better if we take piece of this or piece of that. It's more about our being fully in this world and what we experience there.
What a beautiful answer, I have to say. Oh, beautiful. Carlos, do you want to say something else?
Yes. In this question of Juan, I think this thing of Patočka that, and I saw this also in the work of Martin too, the human experience of the first step. I think this helps to think of the world in a holistic way, not my religion and my academic life, and no, it's one life, and we can share the experience of being shaken this this first step. I think it's a pretty good option to think the relation of the bridge between academia and spirituality. Yeah, I think that this is the Patočka thought. It's a way to rethink how do you live spirituality and your academic life. I think it's a pretty suggestive author to think these things. Yeah, of course.
I was thinking of Maria Zambrano, the Spaniard philosopher, when she said, "I have one life. I can't think of my heart, and I can think of the reason.
Yeah.
It's different times and spaces. I have just one life, and I have to live it. I just need a broader reason, because I have to understand sensibility with my own reason, and I have to understand and deepness in life with my own reason. So there's no academia, as Jorge says so beautifully, as a group of ideas, and there's no spirituality as in another realm. But we've learned maybe it's different, but it's not. We have just one life.
Yeah.
And this is it.
And this category of the shaken, huh? You already have talked about logos, but this is we can think this category in the relation between logos and pathos. They're in the experience is going together. Yeah, it's not only logos, it is not only pathos, it's going together. And the term shaken, in Spanish, we are said the word was when we was talking the conmovidos, el conmoverse. It's a pretty good way to think the approach with the things, no, with the world, with the cosmos, no, to be shaken, to be conmovidos. I think it's a pretty good way to understand the manner that with the relation with the things, you know?
Yes, I just felt this poetic reason, as Maria Zambrano says, poetic reason, this possibility to feel everything and to understand this holistic way, as Martin says. Well, I think we have 5 minutes more. I would say just to make a question. When Carlos was talking about Plato and Diotima and the beauty and the horismos, and this non-objectivity of the idea, this daring position, Patočka's position. And when you mentioned Rosen, and Rosen said, there's no realm of ideas. I don't know if there are platonically ideas. I don't know, because beauty has to exist, and beauty has to be seen to be beauty, because I can think of a beauty, an invisible beauty is really weird, says Rosen.
I don't know,
So beauty exists, of course, but it exists in the world. And it belongs to the world and it belongs to the eternity at the same time. So I think you said Patočka has something to say about this. And this non-objectivity makes me think of Rosen in this beauty sense, beauty itself sense. So, what about the horismos? That's my question once again. Where's the horismos when we're thinking of this continuity, so to speak. When we think of beauty, for instance, the continuity of existence, beauty is in the world, but it transcends at the same time, as we can read in Phaedrus. So how can I understand Horismos in this context we're talking about?
Well, when Patočka talks about Chorismos and he refers to the experience of freedom, he's not talking about Chorismos as something. It's an experience, the experience of freedom. It is not something that you can to get in a conceptual way. I must find what happens with beauty. What happens with beauty when you have this way of think about the Chorismos. Because some authors say that Patočka gives more importance to Chorismos than the eidos, than the ideas. But the way in what he understands Chorismos is not a concept, it's not a separation, it's the experience of freedom. This way to say stop to the what you have in front, to say to stop it. But it's an experience. It's not a conceptual thing. I want to find what happens with beauty when you have the experience of beauty that has all these characteristic of things. It's in the realm of the idea, if this exists, but it's in this realm too. So my research is to find what happens with that.
Okay, thank you. It's a beautiful answer. It's an experience. So
yeah, it is.
They are beautiful. Well,
I also said in the beginning, Patočka with this thing to start with experience and trying to do this with Plato, I think it's an amazing thing. Because we always think of Plato in the ideas and the other world, this revolutionary way to see, no, Plato is not this. Plato is here. I think it's a pretty amazing thing in Patočka.
Absolutely. Well, Kristen says, I just want to thank you for this dissertation. It was a great morning. Thank you very much, Kristen. I think the same. He's in New York right now. Well, I have to say thank you for this wonderful encounter. This is your home. This is so absolutely excellent. Thank you very much, Jorge. Thank you very much, Martin. It's been so wonderful. I'm so grateful. Thank you very much, and I want you to come back very soon.
Thank you to you, Lorena, and Carlos, of course, and Martin. And yes, that was an amazing talk here. I hope you could understand me. My rusty English is sometimes it's
Absolutely. Martin, thank you very much for being in this side of the ocean. This is your home.
Thank you for having me. It was absolutely incredible exchange, and thank you for organizing this and for putting us all together, and I hope we will find an opportunity to continue.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think you have to stop the recording, Carlos.
I have to stop the recording here. Yeah.